I never saw it coming. When I first met Rachel, I was completely captivated. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had this warmth about her that made everyone around her feel at ease. I fell in love with her laugh, her endless curiosity, the way she made me feel like I was the most important person in the room. For years, I believed we had something real, something unbreakable. At first, I was the perfect husband, the kind of man who always remembered to say, "I love you," at the end of every phone call, who took her out on spontaneous dates, who helped around the house without being asked. I would surprise her with little gifts, a book she'd mentioned months ago, her favorite flowers just because I thought of her. I cooked her dinner on her bad days, rubbed her feet when she was tired, and always made sure to listen when she had something on her mind. I didn't just love Rachel, I worshipped her. I tried to be everything she needed, the kind of husband who went above and beyond to make sure she was happy. I believed that love was something you worked at. That every gesture, no matter how small, was a building block and a strong foundation. And I thought we were building that. We bought a house together, a place that seemed like the perfect reflection of our shared dreams. I worked harder than ever to make it everything Rachel wanted. Granite countertops, a huge backyard for the garden she'd always dreamed of, a walk-in closet for her growing collection of clothes. I thought this was my way of showing her how much I loved her, how much I appreciated everything she did, even if it wasn't always clear to her. We had our routine. Every Saturday morning I made breakfast, pancakes with extra butter, her favorite kind of coffee, and freshly squeezed orange juice. We'd sit at the kitchen table talking about nothing and everything. I loved those mornings. They were the quiet moments where it felt like everything in the world was just right. But then, slowly, things started to change. It wasn't anything huge at first. Little things. At first, I assumed it was just the stress of her job. She had become more distant, withdrawn. I told myself she was just overwhelmed, but there were signs I couldn't ignore. Her phone started to buzz more frequently, even during our time together. She'd glance at it quickly, then shove it back in her purse or slip it under a cushion on the couch. It was subtle, too subtle for anyone else to notice, but not for me. I convinced myself it didn't mean anything. People were busy, right? She had friends, colleagues. I was probably just being paranoid. The distance between us grew. Rachel started staying late at work more often. Her girls' nights turned into work dinners, and then sometimes she'd just come home late, with a hurried apology and a half-hearted excuse. I didn't want to believe it, but something inside me was slowly waking up. My mind started to ask questions I didn't want to answer. Is she hiding something? Is she lying to me? But even then, I stuck to my role. I kept being the doting husband. I kept cooking her favorite meals, bringing her little surprises. I tried harder than ever to keep things normal, to make her see that I still loved her. I gave her space when she asked for it, hoping that whatever it was, it would pass. I did everything I could to keep her happy, to be the perfect partner. The moment I found the proof, her secret messages, her hidden rendezvous, it felt like I was falling through the floor. I wasn't angry, though. Not yet. The betrayal burned, but I wasn't going to let her see that. No, I was better than that. I was smarter than that. I wasn't going to confront her in some dramatic explosion of emotions. I had something far more effective in mind. I was going to dismantle her life the same way she had dismantled mine. The first step was to keep my calm. I didn't storm out. I didn't scream. I stayed quiet, almost indifferent. I became the perfect husband again, smooth, patient, and full of false affection. I made her feel comfortable, like everything was fine. She had no idea what was coming. She thought I was a fool, an easy target, but I was playing the long game. I was meticulous about it. I started small. I knew Rachel's weaknesses, the things that made her tick, the things she needed to keep up appearances. The social status, the friends who would turn on her at the slightest hint of scandal, the reputation that she thought was so carefully protected. I didn't just expose her infidelity. I made sure everyone would know. I made sure that she'd lose everything she thought she was entitled to. Did she ever love me? Maybe once in the early days, before the cracks began to show. I saw the truth. Rachel wasn't interested in love, she was interested in control. She wanted the facade, the status, the image of perfection, nothing more. And in the end, I realized that I loved the idea of her more than the person she truly was. But I was done with illusions. One evening, as she was rushing out to meet a work colleague, I found an unfamiliar number in her phone's recent calls. I stared at it for a long time. The name meant nothing to me. My heart pounded. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a mistake. But the nagging voice in my head was too loud to ignore now. The last thread of trust I had in her was slipping through my fingers, and I knew I couldn't hold on any longer. That night, after she left, I began my quiet investigation. I didn't want to be the man who snooped, but I wasn't the man who let his life fall apart without knowing why. I started going through her phone. Text messages, emails, phone records. Every message I found confirmed what I had been unwilling to admit. There it was, proof of the affair. The dates, the places, the words, each message cutting deeper than the last. I had never wanted to see this. I had never wanted to know that the woman I had given everything to was lying to my face. But here it was, undeniable. I had been the perfect husband, too perfect, too trusting, too willing to believe that love would be enough. I had built a life with her, but she had built a life without me. I had loved her with everything I had, but she had loved someone else. The pain hit me hard, deeper than anything I had ever felt. But it wasn't anger that surged up first. It was something colder, something more calculated. I realized then that I had played the part of the perfect husband for so long, I had lost myself in it. And now I was done playing. I started with her friends. The ones who admired her, who thought she had the perfect life, the perfect marriage. One by one, I casually dropped hints. A phone call here, a whispered conversation there. Did you hear about Rachel's late nights? I'd say. I always thought she was too good to cheat, but you never really know someone, do you? I let those words spread, like a virus, infecting her circle. She had no idea that the very people she'd built her life around were now questioning everything. But it wasn't just her reputation I attacked. It was her sense of control. I started undermining her carefully. At home, I began to slowly change things, making her question every decision she'd ever made. She'd come home to find things moved around, small details that would leave her disoriented. I didn't let her know it was me. I wanted her to doubt herself, to feel the same confusion I had when I first realized what she was doing. Every small inconsistency made her feel more powerless. The house that once felt like our sanctuary was now a place of unease, a constant reminder of her guilt. When she reached out, begging for answers, begging for reconciliation, I played it cool. I acted like I was on the verge of forgiving her, on the verge of giving her another chance. But I never let her fully back in. I kept her dangling, like a puppet. I didn't want her to think she could just walk back into my life like nothing had happened. I made her feel the weight of her actions every single day. The final blow came when I filed for divorce. I wasn't content with a simple split. No, I wanted it drawn out, messy, public. I didn't want to just break her heart. I wanted to destroy everything she had worked so hard to build, her status, her relationships, her self-image. I demanded everything: the house, the money, the assets, and made sure the legal battle was as long and brutal as possible. The longer it went on, the more isolated she became. Her friends? Gone. Her professional reputation? In ruins. The perfect life she thought she had? Shattered. When the dust settled, I realized something important. I had done it. I had torn apart her life, piece by piece, and in doing so, I had liberated myself. But what shocked me was that the destruction didn't feel as satisfying as I had imagined. Oh, I had every reason to do it, I had been betrayed in the most humiliating way possible. But in the end, I wasn't filled with the sense of triumph or vindication. Instead, there was an eerie emptiness, a hollow space where all my anger had once been. I knew that I couldn't stay in that space for long. I had done what I needed to do. Rachel had lost everything. Her reputation, her social circle, her financial stability, all of it. The house was mine now, and I sold it immediately, making sure the deal went through quickly and quietly. I didn't need the reminders of what we once had. Her pleas were nothing but echoes now. She tried to crawl back into my life, sending text after text, trying to apologize, begging for a second chance, but I ignored them all. When the legal proceedings were over, when everything was signed and sealed, I realized I had no reason to hold on to my bitterness anymore. I had taken everything I needed from the situation, my power, my control, my freedom, and left her behind. But now it was time for me to rebuild, and that would require far more than just abandoning the wreckage. So I got to work. I started with the basics, a new apartment, simple but clean, somewhere I could breathe again. I didn't want the grand luxury I once had, the things that were tied to Rachel. I wanted something that was mine, my space, my choices. I needed to distance myself from everything that once belonged to her. And I did it. The apartment was minimalist, calming, a fresh start in every way. The first time I walked into it, I didn't feel anger or resentment. I felt peace. For the first time in a long time, I was free. I spent my days getting back to the person I had once been. I picked up hobbies I had neglected, long walks, reading, cooking meals for myself without worrying about what anyone else thought. I reconnected with friends who had faded into the background during my marriage. I found out just how much of myself I had given away in the past 10 years. I had lost pieces of who I was trying to be the perfect partner, but now, slowly, those pieces were coming back together. I threw myself into my work, which had always been a steady source of purpose for me. I worked harder than ever before, climbed a few more rungs on the corporate ladder, and started getting attention for the results I was delivering. Success, real success, didn't feel like a means of proving something to Rachel anymore. It felt like a reflection of who I had become, someone who had clawed his way back from a place he never should have been. But rebuilding myself didn't just mean focusing on work. It was about rediscovering who I was outside of the marriage. There was a sense of freedom in that. I could go anywhere, do anything. There were no expectations hanging over me, no one to tell me how I should feel or what I should want. I was finally free to be the man I had buried for far too long. And yet, there was a lingering shadow. The betrayal still stung. It was hard to completely shake the feeling of being played, of having someone who was supposed to love you choose another life behind your back. But instead of letting that bitterness consume me, I channeled it into something more constructive. I began to take up martial arts. It wasn't just for physical strength, but for mental clarity too. Each punch, each block, each discipline felt like a cleansing ritual. I was getting stronger, not just in my body, but in my spirit. And then there was Clara. She came into my life unexpectedly. I wasn't looking for her, but life has a way of surprising you when you're least prepared. She was calm, independent, and strangely unassuming. She didn't have the urgency of someone who needed something from me, and that was exactly what I needed. Clara didn't want to fix me, or save me, or ask anything of me. She was whole on her own, and that was rare. We started off slow. No rushing, no expectations. We went out for coffee, talked about our lives, and took long walks in the park. There was no pressure, no trying to impress one another. It was refreshing. We weren't building anything grand or spectacular. We were simply two people, sharing moments, enjoying each other's company. She didn't know about Rachel, and I had no intention of burdening her with that baggage. I wasn't interested in repeating the mistakes of the past. Clara didn't need to be my salvation, she was just here. And that was enough. As I spent more time with Clara, I began to realize something important. I had spent so long focusing on revenge, on destroying Rachel's life, that I had forgotten what it meant to live for myself. I had built this new life not because I was trying to escape her, but because I was reclaiming who I had lost in that marriage. The more time I spent with Clara, the more I understood the difference between love and control. Rachel had wanted control. She wanted to manipulate everything around her to fit her image of a perfect life. But Clara wanted none of that. She wanted authenticity. She wanted truth. And I realized that for the first time in years, I was starting to believe in the possibility of something real again. It wasn't a love story that saved me. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't the destruction of Rachel's world. It was the simple act of picking myself up from the wreckage and putting myself back together. Every step forward felt like I was moving closer to the person I was meant to be, the person I had buried under the weight of lies, expectations, and betrayal. The final lesson? I didn't need Rachel. I didn't need revenge. I needed to be my own man, to live my life on my terms. And in the end, I learned that the best revenge wasn't in making her suffer. It was in letting go, moving forward, and finding happiness on my own. And that, surprisingly, felt like the sweetest victory of all.